The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
United Healthcare nurse Crystal checked in on a patient.
We do a routine call after surgery, and I could tell in her voice that she was struggling.
Crystal knew she needed help.
And I knew that this is very serious. This is like septic. This is life-threatening.
And she knew just what to do.
And I called the hospital and said, she's coming in, here are her labs.
And got her the help she needed.
I see my role at United Healthcare as a life-saving role.
Hear more stories like Crystal's at UHC.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan area. Limitation and exclusions apply.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Memphis is a city steeped in history. For one thing, it's the birthplace of rock and roll, where Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash were discovered. Memphis is also the home of the blues. On Beale Street is where the legend Muddy Waters performs I Just Want to Make Love to You, and Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World, which was released in 1967. A stark contrast for what was to come just a year later in 1968, where just a few miles from Beale Street, a tragedy would take place. In April of 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would be assassinated. But our story begins in July of 2010 with a mother, Deborah Marion, who at the time is sick with worry. It's been 4 days since she last talked to her adult son, which is highly unusual. The fact is, despite his busy schedule, a day didn't go by where he doesn't take the time to speak with his mother. Lorenzen, or Ren, recently had located to Atlanta, but he still visits Memphis often, which is what was so worrying to Deborah. Because Ren had missed his sister's baby shower. That was something he would just never do. And after that, Deborah had just been frantically calling everyone in his orbit. Family, friends, and no one had heard from him either. Which is why, on July 22nd, with a heavy heart, Deborah picks up the phone and does one of the things that a parent never wants to do. She calls the police to report her son missing. The thing is, Deborah's son isn't just her son. In Memphis, her boy is a true hometown hero. The recently retired NBA superstar, Lorenzen Wright. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 101, Ultimate Betrayal. At 34 years old, Lorenzen Wright cut an imposing figure. At 6'11", 255 pounds. But it wasn't just his stature, million-dollar smile, and charismatic personality that was notorious for lighting up a room. Lorenzen had a heart of gold. For 13 seasons, he played for the NBA. First with the Clippers, and he was absolutely overjoyed when he was traded to his home team, the Memphis Grizzlies, in 2001. That move back home solidified Wren's status as one of the city's favorite sons. By the end of his NBA career in 2010, Wren had earned $55 million. Now, with that level of wealth and fame, he could have turned his back on his humble roots, but not Lorenzen. He was the type of person who wanted to share his success with those around him, his family, friends, and the Memphis community. This is what elevated him to legendary status. But now, a frantic Deborah explains to police that her son lives in Atlanta and that 5 months before, he divorced his longtime partner, Shara Wright, who still lived in Memphis with their 6 children. Pretty quickly, police were able to confirm that Sunday, July 18th, Wren had flown into Memphis, where his friend Phil had picked him up, and together the two went and hung out with old friends. Then, at around 9-ish, Phil would give Lorenzen a ride to pick up his 15-year-old son at the gym, and then he drops both of them off at his ex-wife Shara's house. But before Wren gets out of the car, he looks at Phil and tells him he'll call him later, but he never does. And Shara, Wren's ex-wife, seems to be the last person to see him. In the days following Wren's disappearance, a local news crew went to the house of Shara Wright to ask her about her ex's disappearance.
He was fine. And he's fine now, and I'm not going to believe anything other than that. He's fine now.
When someone goes missing, it's tough. So many unanswered questions when a person just disappears. Obviously, the first question, where did they go? Did something happen to them? Or did they just walk away from their life? But when a larger-than-life celebrity goes missing, someone like Lorenzen, who was beloved seemingly by all, this news just rocked Memphis.
Collierville police are trying to find any information that can help them find Lorenzen Wright, and so far there's been no luck with leads.
And his disappearance was breaking news as day 4 turned to day 5, then 6, and 7. It just seemed impossible. How could someone like Lorenzen Wright go missing? On day 8, investigators would get a clue. They finally got their hands on Wren's cell phone records. And it was like a kick in the teeth when there, in black and white, 9 days before, Wren's last call had been made to 911 at 12:05 a.m. on July 19th. Investigators scramble to get to that 911 recording, and that's when they learned that his call had been routed to the Germantown Dispatch near Memphis. The audio's a bit rough to make out, but as you'll hear, the caller was running for his life.
Georgetown 911, where's your emergency? Hello? 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 I don't have nothing but gunshot.
The dispatcher answers and you hear a gunshot. Then, the terrified utterance of a man yelling, "Oh fuck." 2 more gunshots, and what sounds like the victim crying out, "Oh goddamn." Then another gunshot, then 2 more, followed by the rapid-fire succession of 6 rounds. Then silence. And the dispatcher concludes the call with, "Sounds like nothing but gunshots."
Georgetown 911, where's your emergency? Hello? 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 I don't have nothing but gunshot.
That 911 call should have been geolocated, but it wasn't. That night, the dispatch center was able to get the latitude and longitude coordinates of the area, but tragically, that would be the extent of the investigation. That harrowing call was not passed along to patrol officers for further investigation. It's a well-known fact that in a murder investigation, the first 48 hours are critical for evidence gathering, and that after 48 hours, the likelihood of solving the crime is cut in half. After a delay of 9 days, investigators use Wren's cell phone data to find the location a wooded area just outside of Memphis, where Wren had made that desperate 911 call for help. First responders descended on the area with cadaver dogs, and within minutes, they found Lorenzen Wright, or what was left of him. After being left in the scorching Memphis sun, the father of 6 was so badly decomposed he was unrecognizable. But what was crystal clear was that their hometown hero had been murdered. Of course, the news that a body had been found in a wooded area outside of town spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the place was crawling with law enforcement, news reporters, who were doing live hits, capturing what was quickly becoming a gathering place for family and friends and fans of Lorenzen. But it was almost too much to take when Wren's mother, Deborah, arrives. Flanked on either side by loved ones, news cameras capture a grief-stricken mother. The look on her face as she walks towards the yellow crime scene tape, where she knows her firstborn son had been left to die. It's inexplicable. That kind of grief doesn't account for what you should or shouldn't see in that moment. It's fueled by a mother's primal need to get to her child, no matter what age or what state he was in. He needed his mother, and Deborah needed to be with her son. The sound was guttural as she cried, "Where's my baby?" Thankfully, although her need is more than understandable, Deborah was met by a gentle investigator who wraps his arm around her shoulders and slowly escorts her away from the crime scene, because he knows that by the time investigators had found Lorenzen, his 6'11", 255-pound frame was an unrecognizable 57 pounds. Lorenzen Wright's funeral would be held at the FedEx Forum, where in years past he had dominated the court. Despite his size, he was extremely agile, seeming to defy, or at the very least, mock gravity as he raced down the court. Now, Wren was lying dead in a coffin, surrounded by the thousands who came to mourn his senseless murder.
Everyone else around, all they see the worst in me. He saw the best in me.
Pastor Bill Atkins performed the eulogy.
We have gathered here today to pay our respects and to show our love for Wren. Wren was close to me, my fraternity, my family, a giant of a man whose heart was as large and as tall as his height. His smile was infectious, his work ethic unmatched, his generosity prolific, and his commitment unswerving. Taken from us too soon and too horrifically, Lorenzen will always be remembered for his talent on the basketball court, but also for his love of people off the court. But these are difficult times in which we live. Violent crime is taking away our best. Homicide is still the leading killer of our young men. The loss of Lorenzen has hurt and wounded every one of us. It stings because it was so unnecessary. It hurts because a cry of help went unnoticed and unattended. It cuts deeply into the very fiber and impels us with a deepening sense of loss.
As tears rolled down the faces of Wren's 6 children, who were coming to terms with the fact that they would never see their father again, the mayor of Memphis made a pledge to find out who murdered Wren. The initial theory was that Wren was a victim of robbery. But that was quickly ruled out, because when he was found, Lorenzen was still wearing his expensive jewelry. There would be a few clues from his autopsy. It was determined that he had been shot at least 5 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and 2 times in the face. This suggested that Wren's murder was personal. At the initial stage of the homicide investigation, Shara, Wren's ex-wife, would tell investigators that before his death, armed men had shown up at her house looking for him. She would also confirm that the night that Wren was murdered, he did come over to her house, but that he'd left late that night to conduct a drug deal. She said that she overheard Wren having a conversation with someone she didn't know, and that he left her house that night with a box full of drugs and a large amount of cash. And Shara says he never came back. This information was shocking to investigators. Why would a retired NBA player who'd earned $55 million need to sell drugs for quick cash? But Wren being murdered, execution style, and the fact that there were 2 different types of shell casings that had been collected near Wren's body, which meant 2 different types of guns were used, and that potentially there had been more than one killer. Following that evidence, they wondered if the sale of illicit drugs was the motive for Wren's murder. During the investigation, detectives learned that Wren's public persona was real. He was a great guy, but he was also having serious financial problems. Wren and Shara had lived and spent lavishly. Expensive cars, homes, jewelry. But by 2010, that lifestyle had caught up with them. And now, Wren's NBA career was over, which meant no more lucrative multi-million-dollar contracts. At the same time, the couple's marriage was on the rocks. After 13 tumultuous years, with allegations of infidelity and domestic violence, their marriage ended in divorce in 2010, 5 months before his murder. As part of their divorce settlement, Lorenzen took out a $1 million life insurance policy for his children, and he was also ordered to pay $26,000 a month in child support and alimony. But the galling truth was that even though Wren had made $55 million during his basketball career, he was broke. He had 2 expensive homes that were in foreclosure, and he was bouncing checks left and right. He didn't have the resources to pay that $26,000 a month. Detectives theorized, had Wren been so strapped for cash that he'd resorted to selling drugs as a way to make money? Did he owe money to the wrong people, the kind of people who would execute you in cold blood to send a message? Detectives dug in, trying to find any drug connection to Wren. But at the end of the day, there was no evidence to support that theory. Over time, the investigation would stall. But Lorenzen's mother, Deborah, from day one, kept telling investigators to look into Shara, Wren's ex-wife.
This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
Totally, yes.
It's an absolute riot, and the only movie that can be described as
so much weirder than the last time. What last time?
It's the frequel.
You ready?
We've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays.
What deeply out of touch old person came up with that?
You did.
Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
It's Wednesday Addams. I see you're trying to distract yourself from your own banal thoughts. Let me help. Here's a recording thing made of my latest root canal.
Wednesday, Season 2, begins August 6th, only on Netflix.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Zysol is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Zysol keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Zysol. At night.
It's back to school season and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask second grade teacher Mr. Torres.
Put me and just one Clorox wipe on a team? We can take on crayon smudges, sticky fingerprints on every surface, sneezes on the door handle, juice box explosion by the sink, snack crumbs, and don't even get me started on the bathroom passes.
Clorox Disinfecting Wipes, teacher's #1 wipe.
Think about it. Bathroom passes.
Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Of course, from the beginning, Shara was a person of interest. The spouse always is. But she was adamant when she spoke to police and local WREG News Channel 3 that she had nothing to do with Wren's murder.
If I knew who did this to Lorenzen, you would know who did this to Lorenzen.
But Deborah was steadfast and very loud to police. In her heart, she believed that Shara had played a role in her son's murder and that she'd concocted this drug story as a distraction. But a mother's gut isn't evidence. There was nothing connecting Shara to the murder. Sadly, the investigation grew colder and colder as every person of interest was cleared. Everyone, that is, except for Shara. However, 4 years after Wren's death, his murder investigation, tangentially, was in the spotlight again. By then, Shara had become an ordained minister and had started a nonprofit called Born to Prosper Ministries. But those pursuits didn't pay the bills, and her primary source of income was from Wren's NBA pension and that $1 million life insurance policy that she was supposed to be safeguarding for her children. Wren's father, Herb, believed that Shara was spending the money frivolously on things that weren't in the best interest of the children, and he wanted Shara removed as the controller of the money. This court proceeding would be protracted and contentious, but it would reveal that Shara had already spent the bulk of that $1 million policy. At the end of the day, Shara lost control of the insurance money. What was left was put into a trust for the children, but that wasn't the last anyone would hear of Shara Wright. 5 years after Wren's murder, Shara would self-publish a book called Mr. Tell Me Anything. Billed as a work of fiction, the story of the main characters seemed to parallel her life story with Lorenzen Wright, at least according to Shara. The book's about a woman who marries an NBA player who is unfaithful and both verbally and physically abusive. The book, Mr. Tell Me Anything, sent shockwaves throughout the community. But as far as the investigation was concerned, there was no smoking gun. After the book's publication, Shara would give an interview to Sports Illustrated.
Did you have any part in Lorenzen's murder?
At first, I'm a wife, then I'm a mother, and then thirdly, I'm an author. The law enforcement should do what's best to find out who's the killer.
And you understand, obviously, why I had to ask that.
I do, but I'm a wife, a mother, and an author. I let people do what they're good at doing, and I'm just gonna do what I'm good at doing. They need to spend time and focus and find out what happened to him. We all need to know.
Shara's interview really rubbed people the wrong way. Her reply about whether or not she had anything to do with Lorenzen's murder was odd, to say the least. She didn't answer the question. But again, that didn't mean she murdered her ex-husband. And over the years, Deborah kept telling police over and over again that they needed to look into Shara, that she was the only person with a motive to murder Wren, the life insurance policy and his NBA pension, that she believed that Shara had murdered Wren because she was greedy and jealous, that she knew that Wren was moving on with his life without her. But again, investigators would tell Deborah that wasn't evidence. What they didn't share with Deborah was that they'd been sitting on something explosive. For 5 years, police had kept a lid on information related to an informant who had come forward with a very compelling story. In 2012, 2 years after Wren's murder, a man named Jimmy Martin reaches out to the police. Jimmy's Shara Wright's cousin, and he tells investigators that he knows exactly what happened to Wren, and he's willing to share everything in exchange for immunity from prosecution in Wren's murder. At the time, Jimmy is already in prison. He was convicted in 2012 for the murder of his girlfriend, and he was sentenced to 20 years. Knowing that, investigators take Jimmy's overture with a grain of salt, but they go and they talk to him. And according to Jimmy, Shara was the mastermind behind her ex-husband's murder. A couple of months before Wren was killed, Shara invites Jimmy over to her house, and it's then that she drops a bombshell, claiming that Wren has taken out a hit on her life, which is why she wants to murder him before he kills her. Shara would enlist his help and that of another guy, Billy Turner, Shara's landscaper, and a man she'd allegedly had an ongoing secret affair with while she was still married to Wren. Billy was also the deacon at the church Sherry attended. Over the next 2 months, Jimmy, Billy, and Shara continued discussing their plans to murder Lorenzen. Shara made it clear that they would be the shooters and that she would take care of them with the NBA money from Wren's retirement and also the insurance money, that whoever pulled the trigger would get $50,000. They had first attempted to execute Wren in Atlanta after Shara had visited Wren at his condo, and before she left, she made sure to leave a window unlocked. Not long after, Jimmy and Billy would drive to Atlanta. They crawled through that unlocked window, and they saw a man lying on the sofa. He was bald and not 6'11", so they knew that it wasn't Wren. It was his roommate. Wren wasn't home, so the two men crept out of the window and left after they spotted security at the complex. After that, Shara came up with a new plan. She tells Jimmy and Billy that she's going to lure Wren back to Memphis, but first, they need to scope out a secluded place where they can ambush him. 2 days before Wren's murder, Shara, Jimmy, and Billy would drive around Memphis, looking for the perfect out-of-sight place. They would settle on that undeveloped wooded area, which had a single-lane road that cut through the acreage. The wilderness was bordered by barbed wire fencing. Once they agreed upon a spot, Shara began texting Wren erotic and sexually explicit messages. Knowing what we know now, Wren's response to Shara's twisted, manipulative messages is truly heart-wrenching because he believes she really wants him. He says, "Wow, LOL, when?" ? And Shara kept reeling him in to the point where he responds, "Okay, let me check flights!" ! Police had seen these text messages early on in the investigation, but now, with more context from Jimmy, if it were true, was a whole new level of diabolical. Because Shara had knowingly manipulated Wren back to Memphis with the sole intention of murdering her ex-husband. According to Jimmy, the next time Shara and Billy came to pick him up at his home in Mississippi, they both were acting cagey and spooked. It was then that Shara confided, "We did it. Lorenzen's dead." She tells Jimmy that they need to borrow his mother's metal detector to find a gun that they'd left behind at the murder scene in the woods. Shara tells Jimmy that on the night of the 18th, Wren came to her house. And she lies to him, saying she needs to meet a man to pick up some money. Wren agrees to go with her. When they get to the wooded area, he has no idea that he's being set up, that Billy, his former landscaper, is lying in wait. Shara and Lorenzen get out of the car, and they walk to the place that Shara knows Billy is hiding. Then, according to Jimmy, Billy starts shooting, and Wren, realizing too late that he's under fire, that the mother of his 6 children has set him up. And in disbelief, he begins to run for his very life. Shara and Billy chase Wren down, following the light that's emanating from Wren's cell phone as he desperately calls 911. They see him jump the barbed wire fence like a deer. And at 12:12 a.m., when the dispatch hears that chilling call for help, and those gunshots, that's Wren being murdered. Because when he falls to the ground, Shara and Billy have caught up to him, and they fire multiple rounds into his body.
Georgetown 911, where's your emergency? Hello? 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 I don't have nothing but gunshots.
Jimmy tells police that he wasn't there the night Ren was murdered, but that he helped Shara and Billy clean up the crime scene 2 days later before anyone realized that Lorenzen was even missing. They would use his mother's metal detector to find spent shell casings and search for one of the 2 guns that had been inadvertently left behind the night of the murder. Billy and Jimmy would then drive to a secluded lake in rural Walnut, Mississippi, 75 miles away from Memphis, and that this is where Billy tosses one of the murder weapons. Now, you might be wondering, if Jimmy came forward in 2012, why weren't Billy and Shara arrested? Apparently, in May of 2012, detectives went to the lake and they tried to retrieve the gun, but the water was murky and they couldn't find it. Without a murder weapon, and given their informant's criminal history, they didn't feel they had enough to arrest Shara and Billy. However, in November of 2017, investigators would ask the FBI to help them find that gun. After days at the lake, the dive team was successful, and they fished out a 9mm handgun. Ballistics would match some of the spent shell casings found at the crime scene to that gun. In December of 2017, Billy Turner was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Lorenzen Wright. A short time later, on December 15th, Shara Wright, who was then living in California, was also arrested for first-degree murder, more than 7 years after Ren's death. At first, Billy Turner and Shara Wright pleaded not guilty. However, in July of 2019, Shara made a deal. She pleaded guilty to the facilitation to commit murder and attempted murder. The second charge was related to that botched attempt to kill Lorenzen at his Atlanta condo. Shara receives a 30-year sentence, which meant she would be eligible for parole in just 7 years. After Shara's sentencing, Deborah was so desperate to see her grandchildren, who'd been kept from her all these years. She would directly speak to Shara in court.
Cheryl, I want to thank you for giving me my grandchildren. That's what I want to thank you for. But I want you to unlock them so I can visit them, so they can see their grandma. Because Sophia keep calling. She wants to come make chicken and dumplings. She wants to come and just to make chicken and dumplings. I want her to come. And the twins going to be playing basketball near us now, so we want to see them too. We want them to be talking. Let them know we didn't do anything to them. We didn't lie to them or anything. We just love them. We just want to see them. That's all. I want you to get the kids and let them know we didn't do anything to them. We love them. We want to see them.
In March 2022, Billy Turner's trial begins, and the prosecution's star witness is Jimmy Martin, an unindicted co-conspirator with immunity who would share the details of Lorenzen's murder. He would explain how Shara and Billy had come to pick him up a couple of days after Ren had been killed.
She need to find the gun. She said, the plan went through. Everything went through that night. What are you talking about? Okay, she said the plan, the murder of Lorenzen had went through.
According to Jimmy, Shara would explain that the murder didn't go according to plan.
She had lost one of the guns.
She had lost one of the guns.
Yes, sir.
And that was what the metal detector was for.
Yes, sir.
Jimmy says that Shara had driven Lorenzen to that field, the one they had selected days before, that it was dark and secluded, and how Billy was already there, waiting for them.
Her and Lorenzen met up with Billy on this road. That's when I guess they ambushed him.
You say you gas? Why do you say you gas?
Because I wasn't there.
Did she tell you what happened once they met up with him, other than Lorenzen jumping over the fence?
Lorenzen had his back to him. They started chasing him. They started firing at him, chasing him. He jumped through the fence. He was jumping like a deer. Caught him when he fell. She said both of them had guns.
Did she say whether or not both of them fired?
She said both of them fired.
According to investigators, there's no direct evidence that Shara was one of the shooters, other than Jimmy's statements and her phone records, putting her at the scene. Billy's defense was that Jimmy Martin was the real killer, and he could prove it because he had an alibi. But Billy's cell phone placed him at the scene of the crime at 12:12 a.m., whereas Jimmy's cell phone was in Mississippi. After roughly 2 hours, a jury would find Billy Turner guilty on all charges, and he would be sentenced to life, plus 40 years.
The last 11 years, Deborah Marion has been on a race for justice for her son, Lorenzen Wright.
He was telling me, do not stop, do not stop. So I said, tell me.
The marathon came to a conclusion last week when a jury convicted Billy Ray Turner in his murder. Wright's ex-wife, Shara, is currently serving 30 years for facilitating the murder.
Man couldn't do what God did. He did. He freed me. It's like my heart been covered in ice. Now some heat done got on and melted. Now I can go forward now. Quit thinking about bad stuff now because something good done happened out of all this.
And as for Shara, she would come up for parole for the first time in 2022.
And it is not something that I have to receive or something that I should receive. And I'm asking today for your mercy.
Deborah spoke to WREG News Channel 3 after Shara was denied parole.
Thank you, Jesus. That's the only thing I can say. Thank you, Lord, because he feel my pain. I'm glad she don't need parole. I can't have parole. If I could see my son again, I'll be glad for her to have parole.
Shara will have another opportunity for parole in 2027, and Deborah says she'll be there.
I'm going to be there every time they call her name. That was my firstborn.
Up next, criminal mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I discuss the case in more detail, and trust me, I have a lot of thoughts about this case. Speaking of thoughts, we would love if you would take a minute to rate and review the show. Refer us to a friend. It really helps. And as always, thanks for listening. From Cloud 10, Criminal Mischief is a pie-in-the-sky production recorded in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself. Music by Soundstripe. I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.